So, next on the agenda, we have Barbara Germaine, AKA Chu-Teh. Yes. Chu-Teh is a nuclear physicist. She spent 32 years at the National Atomic Laboratories, and I'm sure they've never been the same. Chu-Teh.
The summer between our 4th and 5th grades, namely on the 16th of July in 1945, we entered the nuclear age. There was a test named Trinity that was conducted near Alamogordo, Texas, on a 100-foot tower that yielded about 21 kilotons. In August, the weapon that was used to be tested was called Fat Man, and it was the same as the weapon that was used on Nagasaki on August 9th of that year, which helped win the war considerably. Okay. The U.S. conducted a nuclear test, the last one, on the 23rd of September, which is 21 years ago tomorrow. In total, the United States conducted 1,054 nuclear tests during those years. Today, we are not conducting nuclear tests, and the reason for that primarily is that the international community has changed its mind about the need for nuclear weapons. There are two treaties that are currently being observed by the United States. The first is called the Limited Test Ban Treaty, which prohibits tests in the atmosphere, in outer space, or underwater. The second is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which prohibits all tests anywhere, including those for peaceful uses. Our presidents have signed both of these treaties, but our Congress has not ratified either one of them. The Limited Test Ban Treaty entered into force in 1963, but the Comprehensive Treaty would not enter into force until it has been ratified by all the countries who signed it. Now, this is a peculiar situation, but it's not unusual for, I think, as we're seeing in the UN today with chemical weapons. During the period before the Limited Test Ban Treaty, we were able to test in the atmosphere, and a humongous database was developed of nuclear weapons effects during that period, which will never be repeated. John Hopkins and I just recently finished a book about that period of testing at the Nevada test site, which is called Nuclear Weapons Testing at the Nevada Test Site, the First Decade. Of course, there have been a lot of other remarkable advances in nuclear weapons, the field of nuclear energy, reactors. There have been a lot of advances in medicine. I wouldn't be alive today had it not been for a CAT scan in 2006. When we were in high school, there was the proton, there was the neutron, and there was the electron, and that was about it. Today, there is a whole closet full of particles, and I don't think we've quite seen the end of it yet. Knowledge has also been gained about the effects of nuclear weapons on people, on animals, on materials, and this information has indeed been used. What I did was I wanted to enjoy my work. That was my top priority, and I've always done that, and I've had a lot of fun. What I did, both at Livermore Laboratory, Los Alamos Laboratory, and then I worked for an outfit called R&D Associates that was under contract to the Defense Nuclear Agency. I primarily developed, used, and reviewed numerical calculations of shock waves produced by nuclear explosives in both the atmosphere and in the ground. Two examples of the kinds of projects I worked on. One was a nuclear shock tube. We took a 2.2 kiloton bomb and put it at one end of a tunnel. And the question was, would the ground shock close the tunnel, or would the air shock go down the tunnel and create pressure to keep the tunnel open? We did the test. The shock came out of the canister where the nuclear weapon was located at Mach 380, went down the tunnel 400 feet in 0.004 seconds, faster than you can blink your eye. It turns out that our calculations matched the data, which was pretty exciting for us. In 1976, Larry and I were married, or 75 we were married, and we were asked to go to Los Alamos in 76, which we did. John Hopkins, the fellow with whom I wrote the book, hired us. He was at the time the division leader for nuclear weapons testing at the Nevada test site. There's been a lot of managerial changes since the 1940s, as was alluded to earlier. I think that were primarily due to tighter money, to management, which oftentimes was bloated, highly paid, and oftentimes untrained. A good physicist does not necessarily make a good manager or a good director, or in the other field I think you can talk about. I think perhaps the most significant changes that we have seen have been related to chip and computer technologies. Every time I start to think about them, I keep thinking of more things that they have brought to us, and I think they're going to go right on continuing. Another area is of change, of terrific change, is the price of education. When I was at San Diego State and then attending Berkeley for some classes, you paid $32 a semester for your education. I could work for 2 days at minimum pay at Dorman's, and I graded papers and worked as a library aide, whatever. But you could do this, and in 2 days, 16 hours, you paid for a semester of education, which is not at all true today. I don't know exactly what the prices are at the university today, but I understand they're quite a bit higher. Just say the least. I'd like to talk just a little bit about females and minorities and some of the terrific changes that have taken place in those areas. from my point of view, if I worked diligently, got my work in on time, and was correct, the guys would start coming to you and asking you questions, and pretty soon you'd be just one of the guys. And it just, you do have to prove yourself, perhaps a little more than just another guy being hired, but it works. At least I thought it did. I think that the important thing that minorities and women are learning today is that there has been a lot of change, but it really takes generations to change a culture. And what we're trying to do is to change a culture so that women can indeed be looked at differently than they had been in the past, and that just plain old takes a lot of time. I'd like to talk about a couple of anecdotes along those lines. My mom would let me skip school maybe once every couple of months, and we'd go downtown shopping. You probably remember Walkers and Marstons. And anyway, we would do that. We got on the bus one day, and I got all excited, and I started hollering, "Mommy, Mommy, there's a baby monkey." She grabbed me, she turned me around and slapped me hard on the face. She turned around, and there was a black lady. She sat next to her and profusely apologized to her. I decided I had better do that too. And my folks had taken me to the zoo a lot, but I had never before seen a black person, let alone a black baby, until after the Second World War, or during the Second World War. And San Diego changed a great deal in those years. We got a lot of new people. On the other end of the spectrum, sort of, I had a girlfriend at Livermore who was a black lady. She was the only black professional. She worked in computer security. Her name was Judy Ford. She put herself through the University of California at Berkeley with 2 sons. She would take me to black political parties, which were in Oakland, which were pretty exciting. And the people were just great to me. She was working at the lab. She quit the lab. She put herself through Berkeley again to get a law degree, and she ended up becoming a judge. So I think she was an example for many people. Westinghouse had come to San Diego State to interview graduates in the sciences as potential employees. They would interview you for about a half an hour, and then they would later decide if they wanted to ask you to come and visit them. I sat down with this dude in the interview, and about 5 minutes after, he kept talking about the parties that they had at Westinghouse. I said, well, hey, that's real nice, but what would I be doing as a person working at Westinghouse? And he turns to me and he says, we have never hired a woman professional, but we're very interested in your husband. We were hired, both my husband at the time, Pat Crowley, and I, had been hired by Livermore Laboratory, and he was hired by the theoretical department, and I was hired by the experimental department. I was not given an assignment in a particular division, was told to go out and interview some other folks and make up my mind where I wanted to go. So I was in one division, and I was talking to a fellow, and he says, are you a woman or are you a physicist? I said, well, Dr. Hadley, I happened to be both, and we went on with the talking. Anyway, I ended up in that division. Not with him, but as my boss immediately, but he was around. The last little anecdote I want to talk about is a fellow I was riding with out at the test site one day, going from one place to another. He was from Sandia Laboratories, and he started asking me if I might be interested in coming to Sandia, and he was talking about it a little bit. And I said, well, the work sounds interesting. I'll come down and see you sometime, because he was just down in Albuquerque, and we were at Los Alamos at the time. And then he asks, well, what kind of salary are you looking at? And I said, well, the salary I'm making now plus, my raises, which have been 5-7% or something. And he just about drove off the road. And he said, we've never paid a woman that much. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.